probably won't believe me. I mean, why would you? Skinwalkers, shapeshifters, undead wolves lurking in the Appalachian wilderness. It sounds crazy, right? Yeah. Well, I used to think so too. But after what I went through, I'm not so sure about what's real anymore. You can decide for yourself. This all happened a few years back. I was out in the Appalachian mountains, way off the beaten path. I'm talking about those deep remote woods where the trees seem to grow thicker and the air feels heavier, like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. I'd been hiking solo. I know. Who hikes solo in the Appalachians, right? Yeah, well, I wasn't trying to get myself killed. Just wanted some peace, some time away from everything. Anyway, I'd been out there for about 3 days, just me, my gear, and miles of untouched wilderness. No cell service, no people, just the hum of nature, the occasional rustle in the underbrush, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, like the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. But then, things started getting strange. The first sign was the footprints. I was setting up camp for the night in this little clearing surrounded by thick forest on all sides. I'd found this spot that seemed untouched by human hands, like nobody had set foot there in decades. But as I started gathering some wood for a fire, I noticed something in the dirt. At first, I thought they were just animal tracks, big ones. Too big, though, you know what I mean? Like wolf prints, but larger, heavier, and spaced in a way that didn't make sense. Wolves don't walk like that, at least not the ones I've seen. Still, I tried to shake it off. It's the wilderness, right? Weird stuff happens. Then that night, the sound started. I was sitting by the fire, eating one of those terrible freeze-dried meals. Nothing special. When I heard it. At first, it was just a howl, deep and low, echoing through the mountains. Wolves, maybe. But it was the way the sound carried, like it was coming from all around me, bouncing off the trees in a way that made it impossible to pinpoint where it was coming from. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, but I told myself it was just my nerves. I mean, I was alone in the middle of nowhere. That can mess with your head, right? But it didn't stop. As the fire died down, the howling got louder, closer. It wasn't just one howl anymore. It was many, overlapping in a way that made it sound unnatural, distorted, like a choir of wolves with voices that weren't quite right. There was something wrong with them. It wasn't just wolves out there. I don't know what possessed me, but I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, shining it into the woods. The light barely cut through the darkness, but I could see the trees, the thick undergrowth, and nothing else. No eyes shining back at me, no movement, just the trees swaying slightly in the wind. Then the wind stopped. Everything went dead silent. Not even a cricket chirped. That's when I felt it, that heavy, oppressive feeling like something was watching me. Not just from one place either, from everywhere, all around me. My instincts screamed at me to pack up, to get out of there, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. And that's when I saw it. A figure standing just at the edge of my camp, half hidden in the shadows. At first, I thought it was a person, maybe another hiker or someone who'd gotten lost. But as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I realized something wasn't right. The figure was tall, too tall to be human. Its limbs were all wrong, too long, too thin. And its head was elongated, like a wolf's but distorted, like something wearing a wolf's face as a mask. My heart was pounding in my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just stared at it, and it stared back, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. And then it changed, slowly, like it was shedding a skin. The thing's body contorted, bones cracking and shifting in ways that should be impossible. Its human-like form twisted into something more beastly, more feral, until it stood there on all fours. This grotesque, half-rotted wolf creature, its skin hanging loosely off its frame, patches of fur missing, and its mouth twisted into a snarl that sent a shiver down my spine. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in place, but eventually my body kicked into gear, and I bolted. I ran like I've never run before, not caring where I was going, just wanting to put as much distance between me and that thing as possible. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the underbrush. But every time I glanced back, it wasn't just one creature anymore. There were more of them, moving through the trees, keeping pace with me, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. I don't know how far I ran, but eventually, I stumbled into another clearing. I was gasping for breath, my legs burning, but I didn't dare stop. The howls had started again, closer this time, circling me. I fumbled for my flashlight and shone it around, desperate for any sign of help, of escape, and then I saw her. At the edge of the clearing, standing just beyond the reach of my light, was a woman. At least she looked like a woman. She was tall, pale, with long black hair that hung down to her waist, and she was wearing this strange old-fashioned dress, like something out of the 1800s. But there was something off about her, something that didn't sit right. Her eyes, they were wrong. Too dark, too empty, like looking into a void. She didn't say anything, didn't move. She just watched me, her head tilted slightly to the side like she was studying me. I called out to her, desperate, begging for help, but she didn't respond. She just kept staring. And then slowly she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that sends chills down your spine. The kind of smile that tells you you're not getting out of this. And then she started to change. Just like the creatures before, her body twisted and contorted, her bones snapping and shifting as she dropped to all fours, her pale skin darkening and stretching, fur sprouting from her flesh as her face elongated into that same grotesque wolf-like snout. I was trapped. There was nowhere to run. The last thing I remember before everything went black was her, them, lunging at me. Their glowing eyes the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, it was daylight. I was lying in the middle of the clearing, my gear scattered around me, but everything was different. The air felt lighter, the forest was alive with the sound of birds and insects, and there was no sign of those creatures. No tracks, no blood, nothing. It was like it had never happened. But it did. I know it did.